Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your co-MC, Rich.
And I'm your co-MC, Rach. Today we're joined by Dusty DeLeon of Hella Big Works Games.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Dusty.
Hi.
How long have you been playing Powered by the Apocalypse games? What was your gateway?
So I've been playing since April of 2020. Back in high school, I played a bit of D&D, but that particularly never really grabbed me. I thought it was interesting, I thought it was fun, but the kind of style of play there never really lined up with what I wanted to do. But I was introduced into the hobby proper by actual play podcasts, such as The Adventure Zone and Friends at the Table.
Ooh, nice. Nice. I really like Friends at the Table.
Yeah.
What was your first PBTA game that you played or ran?
Ooh, it would have actually been my own, surprisingly.
That's cool.
Yeah, a friend invited me to play. They're like, hey, would you like to come and play in a game that I'm running? I'm like, you know what? That sounds great. I have a lot of free time right now. That's what kicked it all off for me.
This makes you neat because you are a convert to PBTA during the pandemic, even. You didn't have a whole parade of PBTA games at conventions to go find. You found it for podcasting instead.
Yeah. They're podcasting, I guess, like just through Discord servers as well.
Okay.
But it is interesting because I started with The Adventure Zone, which was D&D, and then through The Adventure Zone, I was recommended Friends at the Table, which was mostly PBTA. That's what let me branch out into that.
So, did you buy a bunch of PBTA games, or did you just consume it with other people playing before you dipped your toe into it?
Well, yes, I consumed a lot of it through other people playing it. I mostly understood most of the rules of PBTA through listening to games. For example, I knew a lot about the rules of a Monster of the Week, you could say, but I've never bought it. I just know, oh, this would be a real bad situation because I've listened to the game long enough to know, that fits in with the questions that you'd be asked and that.
That's so cool. That is really, really interesting. Well, let's jump on over here and read a sitch. Read a sitch. In Read a Sitch, the goal is for our guests to talk about a specific issue of play or PBTA play that they want to highlight that doesn't get enough love. Dusty, you wanted to talk a bit about set pieces and pre-written materials and love letters. So kick it off. What interests you about that?
So I think when I say set pieces, I do mean something similar to love letters, right? So because my introduction to play was through the form of actual plays, I feel like I enjoy a lot of theatrics in my games. I like to have introductions to each session set up. For example, in a campaign I started recently, I had this long introduction that ran during the entire Don McLean song American Pie. So it was about 7 minutes of preamble.
Wow.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting to have something that helps players get into the headspace to be ready to play. Because that's what love letters are. They're something that help the players get into the headspace after a long time. But I think it's very fun to be able to be like, hey, I have an introduction for you all. Because usually before a session, there's some preamble, there's some joking. But having an introduction helps to establish, okay, we're going to play now. And kind of lead into what the tone is that you're going for at that current moment.
Dusty, with campaign play, just for a random example, would you use the same preamble to establish the setting, or would you adjust it as the story goes on?
It's a different preamble every time. So the first preamble is very long just because that's the one that's leading into the entire campaign. Going forwards, the introduction preamble would probably only be 1 minute or 2 minutes long. It's different for every session, though.
Do you find that the preamble is more reminding the players what happened, or is it a form of prep for you?
It can be a form of reminding players what has happened. I do that sometimes when it's been a long time since we've played. Sometimes schedules don't line up and it's been 3 or 4 weeks before you've played.
Right.
But other times I find it to be a helpful form of prep. It's something that helps me highlight things that are happening out in the world that the players aren't aware of yet. Because I don't like to blindside players with things happening, so I like to make sure to leave little hints there.
I feel like you dipped your toe into a question that I had already. When I think of what you're talking about, it reminds me of the Previously On section of a TV episode. And in the Previously On, they pull a particular scene from 6 episodes ago, or maybe even a whole season ago, to remind you, hey, here is a particular character that exists in our world, and this was their like plot statement of what they care about or what conflict they're in. Is that something that you do in your setups and your love letters?
So it's not exactly so much as a flashback, but you are absolutely right in that it is something that I'd be like, hey, remember this person? They're still around. They're still kicking. It's more like a cold open than anything, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching a lot of CW shows recently. I don't know if you've seen the show Smallville in particular.
Yeah, back in the day. Nice.
I've been watching a bit of that for research for a specific vibe that I want to go for in some games I've been running. Like, the cold opens in Smallville are definitely what I'm going for with that. Showing things that are happening, showing what might be coming up in the session, stuff like that.
And when you do that tease, do you already have, this is their situation and this is how I'll introduce it in? If you have in the love letter, this is character from 6 sessions ago, do you already have in mind how you want to bring that character into the session that you've just done the love letter for?
I do, but sometimes players will follow up on that character because they've been reminded by the love letter.
Ah, okay. Okay, cool.
Which is always very interesting, so I have to shift things around, but I think it's fun usually.
Let's jump on over here and talk about your game tendencies.
Open your brain.
In Open Your Brain, our guests will discuss a specific Powered by the Apocalypse game. Dusty, tell us a little bit about Tendencies, Spirits, and Glamour. What's the game about? What's the setting?
The setting's mostly static agnostic. It's meant to be a more generalized system. I really do love games with settings, don't get me wrong. I think sometimes that sense of space can really help a game along and inform some of its mechanics too as well. But because Tendencies was my first game, I didn't really feel as comfortable making a setting, so I decided to make it more setting agnostic.
What would you say the genre that Tendencies sits in or emulates? Like, what were your inspirations from a genre perspective when you created the game?
It's based on a lot of shonen anime that I've watched. Stuff like Hunter x Hunter, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, mostly, Mob Psycho 100. It's based off the idea of having a fight that is kind of tricky in a way, a fight that is interesting and dynamic in a way that a fist fight isn't. Basic fights are interesting, I think. There's a lot of dynamism you can do there. There's a lot of motion and movement that you can bring into that. But I really love the idea of having a fight that has rules to it, a kind of structure that normally you wouldn't be able to engage in. So it's based off that kind of fight that I've noticed in shonen anime, where a fight will have rules or set structure or something to overcome. That is abnormal.
Are those rules and set structure the same for every fight? Like, is there a basic structure to combat, or does it shift depending on the specific conflict at hand?
It shifts depending on the specific conflict at hand. Sometimes fights will be, oh, you have to get close to this person and beat them up, but sometimes fights will be, oh, you have to stop this music playing, or oh, you have to figure out how to move through this space that is constantly shifting and changing around you, or something to that effect. For example, there might be a fight where it's, oh, you can't approach this person in any way, so how do you attack them? Or there might be a fight in which there are multiple copies of a person, and you don't know which is which. Just like being able to create a lot of different situations that are abnormal and putting players in them, I think is fun. Like seeing how they react to that and what strategies they develop in order to overcome those situations.
Dusty, what mechanics are different in Tendencies, Spirits, and Glamour versus, say, Apocalypse World? Or if you want to compare it to Monster of the Week, since you know it so well.
For me personally, Tendencies is based on a desire to make games run in a way that feels more fair to players, but I have noticed a bit of a struggle with that vis-a-vis the GM being a player. Regardless, I think the main difference is a mechanic I have called Momentum, which give players basically an additional currency that they can spend as they fail. With every failure, they gain XP as typical, but also they gain Momentum. Because failing moves a lot can really suck. Even if it does level you up, you know, it still sucks to constantly fail move after move after move. So I think that by having a currency that builds up and allows you to kind of get a comeuppance, Momentum can be spent to get flashbacks, or it can be spent in order to increase the result overall point by point.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you talking about failing in a string, not only can it suck for players from time to time, although I've played with folks who are like, oh, yay, failure. But others, it can be frustrating. And it can get hard as an MC to do back-to-back. Like, how do I be a fan of the players and true to the fiction and also hit them. So I think it's interesting to insert that momentum in.
Yeah. It does kind of suck because I've GM'd a lot, and it does absolutely suck when players fail a lot and you just can't really do anything about it. I do sometimes have trouble being like, okay, well, now that you failed so much, I'm not really sure what else to hit you with necessarily.
There's only so many times you can announce off-screen badness.
Exactly.
Right.
Discord is another mechanic I have that's on the GM side. If momentum is when players fail a lot in a roll, Discord is for when players succeed a lot in a roll. Because sometimes you just get 10s after 12s after 11s over and over and over. So it's kind of a tracker that builds up, and as it does, the GM can spend some of that tracker in order to do some fun things like make a tendency effect trigger out of nowhere, make an enemy be somewhere they weren't before, put something important in danger. It's a way of making a soft move without needing that failure.
So it gives the MC a few more opportunities to impact the game rather than just looking for a golden opportunity or a missed roll.
Yes, exactly. I suppose you could just make moves whenever you want, right? I just feel sometimes that it's nice to have that justification to make a move.
Yeah, in case the player is like, well, why did you do that?
Yes. You can be, well, I had Discord build up. It also creates this interesting dynamic where players are like, ooh, I've been succeeding a lot, but now that means the GM has a lot of Discord. So it keeps them on their toes a little bit. It's interesting to try and balance both having a good time, but also you want the players to have a bit of anxiety to keep the tension up in the game.
Can momentum affect Discord or Discord affect momentum, or do they both just affect the fiction?
They both just affect the fiction. At one point, I did consider having them affect the other, but then I was like, no, these are both if somebody needs help doing something, so I don't think it's necessarily fair to edit that.
Separate tracks, they both affect the narrative, but they aren't directly linked.
Yes.
I think that's smart. I like that.
What's your favorite move and why?
My favorite move is one called Knowledge is Power. Essentially, it's a hold move that gives you benefits that allow you to use flashbacks, it allows you to gain additional momentum from a roll, or it allows you to bring yourself back from the brink of death. Because it's based on logic. Logic before, in a few versions back, only had one move, which was to ask questions about the world. So typically, players saw it as a dump stat, my playtesters at least. So in order to combat that, I was like, well, what if there's more benefits to it? So Knowledge's Power is kind of a way to combat that general notion of like, oh, well, this doesn't give me anything. If I may, can I also talk about another move that I also like?
Sure.
So there's a move for another stat which is typically considered a dump stat called Dramatic Moves. Originally, in the original text of the game, the GM could give this to you as a benefit, but decided to let players trigger it. Basically, a number of times in the game equal to your Glamour or Charisma. You can trigger this, and you can roll any move with your Glamour stat. Because it's like that notion of like, oh, well, this cool dramatic scene is happening. I really want it to go well, so I'll trigger this and allow it to go well. Or hopefully go well. It's still a roll. Yeah. Because sometimes players will be like, well, I want this character to be smart, or oh, I want this character to be charismatic, but it might screw me in other ways. So by putting those moves there, I say to them like, hey, but you still have options even if you aren't as strong in the combat stats as you can be.
That balance between having a charismatic, very social character versus having a character that is going to do a lot of combat, especially in a combat-centric game, that's an ongoing conundrum, I think, across many games.
I hope that by giving these players those benefits, it helps them in combat situations and also encourages them to make characters that aren't typically statted towards combat. So I think it's interesting.
So you have a mechanic incentivizing people to create non-combat skill sets in a game inspired by anime. This combat seems to be a pretty big, like action, set piece, that kind of thing seems to be a big part from my very small knowledge of the anime you listed.
I think you're pretty right about that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Because I think it's interesting when players aren't necessarily great at combat, but still have to engage in it anyways. I enjoy situations in which when people who aren't typically accustomed to combat are forced to engage in it, I need to find creative ways around that, or power through it just because it's cool, which is kind of what dramatic moves are.
Well, it sounds like it's time for Rich to get a little bit more experience in shonen battle anime.
Crack on my knuckles.
He's been training. We've been working towards this. Dusty, why don't you run us a little bit of Tendencies, Spirits, and Glamour?
Sure.
It is time to act under fire.
In Act Under Fire, our guest will run a bit of their game for us. And so Dusty is nice enough to run some Tendencies, Spirits, and Glamour, and we have the fortune of getting to see live one of Dusty's love letters. So, Dusty, take it away.
Money's been a little hard to come by as of late. So you do what anyone in your position would do. You look for a job. Of course, with your particular skill sets, you've been inclined towards a different type of work. Pays better, don't you know? And so, you've been given a target. Nothing too messy, as long as you handle this properly. You'll be liberating some property from some rich collector called Atlas. A code name, it seems. Looks like the buyer was a bit peeved. This guy tends to show up to auctions wrapped up in so many layers of clothing it's almost impossible to identify him. But somehow, the buyer got a lock on his location. So you're being sent in. Go in, grab some old knife, and get out. $5,000 each for a quick smash and grab. Not a bad haul. Of course, the feds did say you were both selected because of your, unique talents. While that could be due to your past criminal activities, well, needless to say, you're a little wary of this whole situation. But you need that money. So into that taxi both of you go, quietly waiting with the driver. He knows better than to ask questions. You both pull up to the front gate. He pulls away, driving off into the distance. Up, over the fence, past the front lawn. And you're at the front door of an incredibly ornate big mansion. Useless pieces of architecture slapped onto it with no thought for beauty, only extravagance. Thankfully, you have a map. But still, you stare up at this ugly, imposing thing. What do you do?
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I am playing the playbook of the Bellicose, and of course I've chosen the nickname of Plussy because I like it. The Bellicose is skilled at being able to withstand a good deal of damage and deal it out from time to time, so I'm excited to see how Plussy is in play. Rach, what are you playing?
So I'm going to be playing the Star. My character's name is Lamar. The Star, I get a vibe that they're loud and flashy, like making a scene, might be the type of playbook that's good at starting messes, not necessarily ending messes. I'm sure we'll get along fine.
So here we are standing in front of this McMansion. I think Plussy will pull the brim of his cat hat down a little bit so that if there are cameras around, they won't catch his eyes or his nose.
Lamar's gonna adjust her glasses and take in this McMansion. There's all this architecture that is extra architecture, which might be a double-edged sword. Maybe it's like that weird mansion in California with the doorways that go nowhere. And I think she's wondering which one of these windows, which one of these access points are the real one, as opposed to the fake ones.
Uh-huh. Would you maybe like to roll Here's the Plan? Here's the plan. When you attempt to formulate a plan of action or assess the situation you're currently in, roll plus logic.
I would love to. Lamar's not the most logical person, but, I mean, it couldn't hurt, right? Oh boy, that's a 5.
So take a momentum and an XP. You know, you have the front door in front of you.
Yeah, plus there's clearly the front door. I mean, that, I'm guessing, is going to be the real place. And not one of these windows or one of those eyelid things. The front door.
Oh, you're killing me. Listen, Lamar, watch out. I'm going to second story this. And I want to climb up because there's all kinds of parapets and McMansion crap. So I'm going to just grab a place that seems like a handhold and see if I can climb up and get in on a second story.
Sounds like you're going to be using close distance. Close distance. When you attempt to close the distance between you and a threat, roll plus coordination.
All right. My coordination is a 1, so here we go. that is squeaking by with a 7.
So on any hit, you do so, staying where in relation to the threat you appear. So you want to get up to a second level window?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you get up to a second level window, and I think it's probably open. Really no reason to close a window on the second story or like lock it. Maybe you just got lucky.
Once I open up that window, I'll shimmy back over to the roof and offer a hand up to pull Lamar up with me. Come on. Front door.
Well, I mean, I could see. We're lucky this part's not locked.
Right. We are. Come on.
What do we see inside?
Inside, you just see more extravagance. You see paintings of this dude plastered all over, holding some kind of weird... You don't want to call it a dog. It seems almost like those old... In the early 2000s, you remember those robotic dogs?
Yeah, I remember those. I'm old enough.
One of those, but with kind of fins hanging off the side.
Shark dog.
Well, more like a small ball with a face on it and fins on the side of it. It's a small ball, almost a round orb, with a digital visor in the front, and 2 fins hanging off the side, giving it almost a bow-type-like shape.
Yeah, I'm climbing in. Somebody's stupid toy. I don't care. I gotta find that knife.
I mean, we could take that too. I mean, the knife we have to give back, but we could take the little floaty ball thing. Maybe we could keep it as a pet.
Sure, Lamar, that sounds fine. We'll get you a robo shark dog pet.
You do have a map of the mansion and where you need to go.
Okay. I'm heading direct line, try to find the knife.
Mm-hmm. Lamar, are you following?
Oh, of course.
The 2 of you get up to the room with the knife pretty easily. Doesn't really seem to be a lot of security around here. And you see the knife enclosed within a glass case on the pedestal.
Glass cases usually have alarms on them.
But I got this one, Plussy. Lamar has a tendency called a Montero, which means she's capable of opening things. Would this be an opportunity to use that tendency?
I don't see why not. Would you like to give me a... I think this would be a 10 to the world.
Yeah, I think she's going to elbow Plussy and say, "Don't worry, I got this," rolling up her sleeve dramatically. She does squeak by with a... No, she does not squeak by. My dice are cursed today. I only have a 6.
Do you have any momentum?
I do have momentum.
How much?
I have 1.
You can spend that to boost your roll by 1 then.
Oh, definitely we're going to spend that momentum from earlier. She's got a 7.
Perfect.
Nice.
You tap on the glass case, and a small door opens up in the center. Just the right size for you to reach in and grab it with your hand.
I definitely think that's part of the flashiness of Lamar. She didn't need to make it a door, but she needed to show off.
Not bad.
So you reach in and grab it, right?
I'm going to pull open the door and then bend over and look at this knife for a second. Sure looks like the knife from all the documents we had in the debriefing. And then I'm going to grab it.
I think as you grab it, you see something unfolding from underneath it where it rested. Looks like that toy from before. It flips itself up on one fin, other fin standing up into the air, ball in the center. It spins to turn and look at you. It just says, "Boys."
Well, I guess we get to play with your pet, is what Plussy says as he pulls up his own sleeve, and you see that there is a tattoo of a snake wrapped around his right arm, and it starts to writhe and move. I have a tendency called 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. And the ability is thank you for the venom, so I get to create a weak electric field. So I think that might be cool to hurt things like a robot that talks to us.
Right. You also have some metal, which you can use to shoot at enemies.
Okay.
So would you like to take aim at this?
Yeah, I do have some metal. I think he has a couple of paper clips in his hand.
Perfect. Love that.
He will try to shoot that at this weird dog thing.
So go ahead and roll plus coordination for me, please.
All right. That is a 9.
Ooh. So let me see. On take aim, choose one of the below. Something in the space near you has changed. The enemy focuses on you, moving to attack. Your attack hits, but something is caught in the crossfire. Do your damage, but harm something of the GM's choice.
I think something in the space near me has changed. Sounds interesting.
The glass shatters as you shoot this boy through it, and things are quiet for a moment. And then you hear it chanting, "Boys, boys, 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 boys." And from the shards of shattered glass, more of these boys appear. Although they look like the initial one, but while the initial one looks to be made of metal and plastic, these boys look to be made of glass. And they're gonna go to swarm Lamar.
I think Lamar's instinct is this is when she's going to pull out the flashy moves. She's going to attempt to lure them all onto herself, even though they are going for her. But I'm going to try to dazzle them as I dodge these tiny glass boys coming towards me.
Okay, we'll go ahead and roll me a dazzle.
Something I am good at.
Hey.
So that is a 9.
Okay, you get to pick one of the options from dazzle then.
Okay, I'm going to take one of the options from the Star Playbook because I get additional effects to dazzle. So I have all eyes on me, and I'm going to take they are so shocked by my actions that they momentarily cannot register my presence. Disappear from view and reappear wherever you wish. So I'm going to reappear behind Plussy and use Plussy as a shield.
Okay.
I'm just going to move so fast and amazingly that I think it's going to override whatever sensors or however they're using to detect the world.
Mm-hmm. Plus, they all turn on the dime and start approaching you, just all shouting, "Boys, boys, 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 boys."
Lamar, did you grab the knife when you
Oh,
hit this?
of course.
Awesome. Let's get out of here. Lamar, you lead the way, and I'm going to try to hold them back so that Lamar can cut and run, and then I'll take off after her.
How are you trying to hold them back?
I think I'm going to pull out of my pocket some more paper clips, and
All right.
I just continue to
As you
use
run,
my tendency.
As you run, just shooting paper clips at these things.
That's right. That's how scary I am. I shoot paper clips.
Horrifying. Go ahead and give me another take game, please.
Come on, dice. Give me a 10 just once. That is a 6.
Do you have any momentum?
I don't, because it's the first time I've failed.
Oh no. Well, go ahead and take a momentum and XP.
Okay, got me a Mo and an XP.
As you're running, Lamar's ahead of you. You're holding these things off. And suddenly, the wall next to you bursts. These boys pouring out of it, crushing you under them for 6 damage. You're only going to take 4 damage because you have 2 armor, however.
Ooh, 4 damage is rough. Okay.
And standing in front of you is that same man.
Atlas, the heavily clothed man?
Yeah, the man standing in the shadows laughs. And he steps out, strange, fluffy protrusions bouncing on his head. They look like, bunny ears? He shakes his head, still laughing, as he pulls a few crisp $100 bills out from his wallet and starts to fan himself with them. Oh, you should have stayed away. You mean my boys are quite a foe.
Wow. That is rough. I think Plessy is going to try to scramble back, pushing Lamar ahead. We gotta get out of here. We don't have to do this fight. Let's go.
I would like you to give me a swift lean as you try and avoid the attacks of the boys by escaping.
Swift lean. When you attempt to dodge any negative physical effect, roll plus coordination. All right. Man, all I do is roll coordination. I'm so coordinated. Thank goodness.
So coordinated.
I mean, more coordinated than Atlas is. The bunny ears? God.
That is an 8.
Alright, so you pick an option. Either you perform a confrontation move at disadvantage, or I get to position you how I want.
I don't want you to position me where you want. You got all these boys and Atlas, and it's terrible. So I will be making a confrontation move with disadvantage.
I do think this is going to be another take aim. As a boy, I think a boy manages to get ahead of you and turns around and moves to ram into you, Plessy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. So rolling with disadvantage means I'm rolling 3d6, taking the lowest 2.
Yes.
And I rolled a 6 and 2 2s. So that will be a 5.
You're going to get smacked in the face for another 6 damage, which is transferred back down to 2 for you.
Okay.
Lamar, I think that you see Plusy's a bit disoriented from getting hit there. You see Atlas and this wave of boys approaching you. What are you going to do?
I want to do something ridiculous, so I want to pitch this. I imagine with all of the extra clothing that Atlas has, he has this dramatically overly long scarf.
Absolutely.
For those who are of the science fiction persuasion, like a Fourth Doctor length of scarf. I want to grab this scarf and then grab Plusy and use it to rappel out a window.
Oh, I love that. God, what would that even be?
That feels like dramatic moves with special flair.
Absolutely dramatic move, but I have to flavor it. So dramatic move lets you replace the normal, whatever a normal move would be.
Mm-hmm.
But I absolutely think you're right that this is a dramatic move. I'm just trying to figure out what it would be.
Would it be Go Beyond?
It would be Go Beyond. When you engage in a dangerous activity that is not represented in the other move look here. So go ahead and give me a dramatic move. Ordinarily this would be coordination, but this absolutely fits as a dramatic move.
Our dice are cursed, so that's like a 4.
Oh my god, critical momentum and XP. I think that you do grab this scarf and you start to rappel down the window. But I think you hear it rip and tear as you begin to rappel down with Plusy on your side. It's not really meant for rappelling, it's more meant for fashion. So it's going to rip, and you're going to fall on the ground. I think you're going to take 6 damage from that. You have 2 armor as well, so you're only going to take 4 damage from that.
Great, I think. Oh, it's going to be a rough landing.
Yeah, that damage is definitely from you landing.
It's not enough to knock me out, but I'm going to have one heck of a bruised tailbone.
Absolutely. The two of you see this massive cascade of boys pouring out from the window and falling down at you, all of them shouting, "Boys, boys, 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 boys."
Man, I really wish we'd asked the taxi to stick around.
Wait till we come back.
What would you like to do?
I think it's tendency time again, because Montero allows me to open things in the abstract. Lamar's going to touch the wall of the building that we're standing beside and use that to open a space between here and the other side of the compound fence as a way to make a really quick escape.
Would you like to make that dramatic move? You have 1 left.
I would love to make a dramatic move.
Go ahead then. Roll plus glamour.
Oh my gosh, we rolled well. That's a 12.
Yes! Yes!
As these boys fly down, Atlas standing above you, both grinning, suddenly the space between the wall and you opens up, and you're all the way at the other side of the compound, the boys smashing the ground where you were just a moment before, looking around confused as Atlas glares out at you. I think it's pretty easy to just hop over the fence and escape at this point.
I give him a little wave with my snake-tattooed arm, and we take off into the night.
Yeah, I think that's great. Congratulations, you won.
Yes! He'll never find us. He'll never come back for his own
Nothing
thing.
Nothing will happen. This is all
Nothing bad ever
fine.
happens.
We absolutely did not keep a part of his scarf. Nope. Not at all.
Mm-mm.
Dusty, that was really exciting. Thank you so much for running us on a quick demo of Tendencies, Spirits, and Glamour.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Dusty, if people want to follow more of your work or more of you on social media, where can they find you?
They can either find me on my itch page at Hella Big Works, or they can find me on Twitter at Tendencies. That's TendenCiesG. I've recently made a new game, Do Not Fear, based on Bloodborne and Hunter x Hunter, about fighting back cycles of stagnation. So if y'all want to check it out, that would be cool. Or you could check out Tendencies too. It's pretty fun.
Very good things. And now we've seen it for ourselves, so I would agree. Dusty, thank you so much for coming on Plus One Forward and talking to us about your game.
Thank you so much for having me.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community, Richard Rogers and Rach Shelkey. You can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at @+1FWD. If you would like to support our show, visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/gauntlet. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and Magay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Aural Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko, Metal Version, and Drowning Attitude. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Aural Hotbed on their website, www.savageauralhotbed.com.
Hi listeners, I wanted to let you know that new issues of Codex are now available in the Gauntlet Patreon feed. Codex is the Gauntlet's bi-monthly role-playing game magazine. Each issue is organized around a theme and stuffed with brand new material for your table, including original games and supplemental material for games like Trophy and Brindlewood Bay. Check out Codex by going to patreon.com/gauntlet. Your pledge not only gets you Codex and other Gauntlet publications, but it also supports all the important work we do in the Gauntlet, including this very podcast. If you'd like to try before you buy, there's always a free issue of Codex available on our website, gauntlet-rpg.com. And if you're looking for back issues, you can find them on DriveThruRPG, including in reduced price bundles. Thanks.